Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how you can be a landlord and not only live for free, but make money where you live. Let's go! I get asked all the time, Bo, what can I do right now that's easy, that can grow my wealth quickly? I ask myself sometimes, what would I or the elite investors I work with in the brokerage business do differently if they could do it all over again today, knowing what they know? Starting off in my early 20s, my wife and I would buy a house, live in it for 2 years, sell it, roll the gains over into the next house, and pay no taxes because we lived there for 2 years. That's a great way to build wealth, but had I known better, the big way is to buy a multi-unit complex and live in that and have the other income coming in. Let me show you how powerful this is on a spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet. Everything in blue is an input cell that kicks out everything in black, which are the results. Let me go over the scenario. We're going to assume that you're going to buy a quadruplex or a 4-unit building. You're going to live in one of those units. You're going to collect rent from the other 3 units. And you are actually going to pay rent as well into the same bank account as the other 3 tenants. And the reason you want to do that is because when you go to sell in the future, the bank and the buyer love to see records of 100% occupancy over the number of years. You still have access to the rent that you're paying into that same account because it's your money. This just keeps the records nice and clean for the buyer and the lender later on. You're going to buy this quadruplex for $320,000, which is about $80,000 a unit, and we're going to sell it in year 5. We're doing a 5-year scenario at a 6% cap rate. 2020, we're selling in the low 5% cap rate, and of course, in tough years, it can be as high as 7 and 8%. When we go to sell in year 5, I'm going to assume a 6% commission and 2% for closing costs. When you go to buy this asset, I'm going to assume 2% in closing costs. We have rents of roughly $800 a month for all 4 units. So you can see the equation right here. I'm going to assume operating expenses of $4,000 per unit, which is about on average what quadruplexes run. Larger complexes, basically over 100 units with amenities like pools and clubhouses and all that. The average right now in the Southeast is running between $5,000 and $5,500 per unit. I have found that quadruplexes, duplexes, eightplexes, smaller buildings like that with no amenities range anywhere from $3,500 to $4,500 per unit per year on the expenses. We're going to assume that your rents are increasing at 2% per year. Keep in mind that would just be going from $800 to $816 a month. You're going to have a vacancy factor of 5% on average per year, and your operating expenses are going to grow at 3% per year. Property taxes, landscaping, pest control, termite, all that. Within operating expenses, one of the beauties of living in an investment property is that you get to count it as a homestead exemption, which means that your property taxes, you're already getting a discount on your property taxes, and at least in the state of Florida, they are limited to a 3% per year increase in value, which is huge savings if it was just a regular investment that you didn't live in. Not to mention when you live in your rental property, you can save on operating expenses because you can see things ahead of time on the expense side before they become a problem. Continuing with the blue input cells is depreciable life, depreciable percentage, and your average federal income tax rate. Let me explain the benefits of these 3 parts. One of the benefits of owning real estate is that the tax law allows you to depreciate the asset, and in residential, they depreciate over a 27.5-year life. Depreciation is done on just the physical building itself, part of the value of the real estate. So the way it works is you take the purchase price of $320,000 times, assuming the buildings are 80% of the value that you paid, is $256,000 are the buildings. Then you take that number and divide it by the 27.5-year life, and basically you get to write off $9,300 per year against your net income. Now, we're not going to get into all the taxes and depreciation on this particular spreadsheet. I just wanted to show you one of the benefits of owning real estate. Here is your net income. This is what you would be actually taxed on. However, this number can be further reduced by your depreciation and the interest portion of the mortgage payments you're making. Now we're going to go into the debt assumptions part of the spreadsheet. Now, before we do that, debt assumptions can vary all over the place depending on who you are and what your occupation is. But typically, if you were buying and moving into your investment, it can range anywhere from 75% to 90% loan to value. In this video, we're going to assume the worst case scenario, which is a 75% loan to value, a 4% interest rate. We're in 2020 and many of you can borrow for much less than that. And we're going to assume a 30-year amortization because this is a residential product of 4 units or less. Now we're going to look at the cash flow projections over 5 years after vacancy, operating expenses, and debt. In year 1, if you can remember, our rent starting off is $38,400, just like we have here. We're increasing this, if you follow the cells, at 2% per year on the rent. So this is going up 2% each year. The vacancy we're going to assume is an average of 5% each year. Then effective gross income, of course, then becomes income minus vacancies. Here's our operating expenses starting off at the $16,000, and we're increasing it at 3% per year, which is what's happening right here. The result is our net income, and our debt service is constant over a 5-year period because we're doing a fixed year, 30-year mortgage. So our before tax cash flow, which is after vacancy, expenses, debt, everything, is $6,700 for the first year and ends up around $7,700 by the end of year 5. Now it starts to get real fun after we sell the building after year 5 and look at what it does to your bank account. Now, the sale price at the end of year 5 ends up being $358,000. You can always look right here at what the equation is. So this is taking F32, which is right here, that's the 5th year net income, divided by the selling cap rate that we talked about. That results in $358,000. Then we're going to subtract the selling expenses, which of course we determined was going to be 8% of the sale price. So that's going to be $29,000 in commissions and closing costs. So now we're at $329,000 after closing costs. Now we have to pay off our debt. So keep in mind our starting mortgage balance was $240,000. And at the end of 5 years, it comes out to $217,000. Now you'll notice in the equation here, it's referring to the payment tab E74. Here's my nifty little payment tab, which does an amortization schedule, $240,000, 30-year amortization, 4% interest rate. Here's the full payment, the interest portion, and the principal portion. And here's the ending loan balance. So we're gonna go down to month 60, because remember this is after 5 years, and we scoot over, there's your ending mortgage balance. So we're going to walk away after all commissions, closing costs, and paying off our mortgage company $112,000. Stick with me here. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but this is an incredible way to build wealth as a newer investor. Here's the significance of the $112,000. When you bought the place, you put $80,000 down, which is 25% of the purchase price, plus your closing costs, which were 2% of the $320,000. So together you put down $86,400 and you returned $112,000. But that's not the whole picture. It's getting more and more exciting. So you put down $86,400 in the very beginning. You had those before tax cash flows of $6,700 increasing each year. And then in year 5, look at the equation, F34, you have the 5th year cash flows plus B40, which is the before tax cash flow reversion. So you had $120,000 in income in year 5. Here comes the finale. I'm about to blow your mind. If you would have had $86,400 down and all of these cash flows in, your net benefit was $62,000. However, if you remember, I had you paying rent with the other 3 tenants. So we need to subtract that part back out. If we subtract out that rent, it comes out to almost $50,000 that you paid over a 5-year period. That equation is right here. So that's basically taking the summation of all 4 units of rent and then dividing it by 4 in order to subtract out your rent over that period. So the net result is $12,000 in your pocket. That means that not only did you live for free for a 5-year period, you actually made $12,000. What? What? That is awesome. Now you can see here I have something called vacancy fluff, which if you look at the equation is the vacancy during that 5-year period. We just assumed you had a 5% vacancy, but the fluff is if you kept it totally occupied during that 5-year period, or if the vacancy by the time someone moved out and you moved them in was even just a little bit less than the 5%, you have another $10,000 in variance there that you could be putting in your pocket. Now keep in mind, this didn't even consider the write-offs for the interest on your mortgage, the depreciation, and there's a lot of other write-offs you get when you live in your place of business. Think about it. The vast majority of people who live in their single-family house and don't have other rental income coming in on the same parcel, they don't get to write off their landscaper, their pest control, their termite, repairs inside the unit, and all that other stuff that you get to write off. Keep in mind, I'm not an attorney or a CPA, so disclaimer, make sure you run all of this by your attorney and CPA before proceeding. If you'd like a copy of this spreadsheet that I use in the video, there'll be a link in the description below. Thanks guys for taking a listen, and I'll see you on the next one.